Emma sat on her small bed, staring at the wedding dress hanging on the closet door. The white silk seemed to mock her, reminding her that tomorrow she would marry a complete stranger. Her stepmother Linda had made it clear that this was not a choice but a business transaction. "You should be grateful," Linda had said just hours earlier, counting the thick envelope of cash. "Dr. Marcus Wellington is one of the richest men in the city. You'll never want for anything again." Emma knew the truth behind those words. Linda had gambling debts that were spiraling out of control, and Emma was simply the most valuable thing she could sell. At 22, Emma had grown up believing that love marriages were fairy tales. Her father had died when she was 15, leaving her in Linda's care. Since then, her life had been nothing but cooking, cleaning, and enduring Linda's constant criticism. The doorbell rang, and Emma heard unfamiliar voices downstairs. Her stomach twisted as she realized Dr. Wellington had arrived for the final arrangements. She pressed her ear to the bedroom door, trying to catch pieces of the conversation. "The girl is healthy and well-behaved," Linda was saying. "She's never caused any trouble and she knows how to run a household properly. I expect complete obedience," came a deep, cold voice that made Emma shiver. "I have a reputation to maintain and I won't tolerate any embarrassment." "Of course, doctor." Emma understands her place. Emma felt tears burning her eyes. They talked about her like she was livestock being sold at market. She had tried to run away twice, but Linda had threatened to call the police and claim Emma had stolen money. With no family, no friends, and no resources, Emma had nowhere to go. The conversation continued downstairs, with Linda explaining Emma's qualities like she was reading from a resume. Emma was an excellent cook. She kept house perfectly. She was quiet and respectful. Everything except the truth, that Emma was terrified and heartbroken. Later that evening, Linda knocked on Emma's door with a shopping bag. Inside was expensive makeup, perfume, and jewelry. "Make yourself beautiful tomorrow," Linda commanded. "This is the most important day of your life. Important for you." "You mean?" Emma whispered, but Linda had already left. Emma lay awake all night, staring at the ceiling and wondering what kind of man Dr. Marcus Wellington really was. She had only seen him once, briefly, when he came to inspect the house. He was tall and imposing, with dark hair and cold gray eyes that seemed to look right through her. He wore expensive suits and drove a car that cost more than most people made in a year. The next morning came too quickly. Linda hired a woman to do Emma's hair and makeup, transforming her into someone she barely recognized. The mirror showed a beautiful bride, but Emma felt like she was looking at a stranger. The wedding was small and cold, held in a courthouse with only Linda and Dr. Wellington's assistant as witnesses. There was no music, no flowers, no celebration. Dr. Wellington barely looked at Emma during the ceremony, answering "I do" in a bored tone like he was agreeing to a business contract. When the judge pronounced them husband and wife, Dr. Wellington didn't kiss Emma. He simply nodded and signed the papers. "The car is waiting," he told Emma, his first direct words to her all day. Emma hugged Linda goodbye, though there was no warmth in it. Linda whispered in her ear, "Remember, you represent me now. Don't mess this up." The drive to Dr. Wellington's house was silent except for the sound of expensive leather seats and classical music playing softly. Emma stared out the window, watching her old life disappear behind them. Dr. Wellington's house was more like a mansion, with tall iron gates and a circular driveway. Emma had never seen anything so grand. The gardens were perfectly manicured and the house itself looked like something from a magazine. "Mrs. Henderson will show you to your room," Dr. Wellington said as they entered the marble foyer. "I expect you to be ready for dinner at 7 sharp. We dress formally in this house." An older woman with kind eyes appeared and led Emma up a sweeping staircase. Emma's room was bigger than Linda's entire downstairs, with a 4-poster bed, sitting area, and windows overlooking the garden. "Don't let his coldness frighten you too much, dear," Mrs. Henderson said quietly as she unpacked Emma's few belongings. "Dr. Wellington has his ways, but he's not cruel." Emma wasn't sure if that was meant to be comforting or terrifying. That evening, Emma put on the only nice dress she owned and made her way to the dining room. Dr. Wellington was already seated at the head of a table that could easily seat 12 people. He had changed into a dark suit and was reading something on his phone. "Sit," he said without looking up, gesturing to a chair far down the table. The meal was served by silent staff, and Emma ate carefully, aware that Dr. Wellington was observing her manners. The food was delicious, but Emma could barely taste it through her nervousness. "Tomorrow you'll meet with Mrs. Henderson about your responsibilities," Dr. Wellington finally spoke. "I entertain frequently for business, and I expect you to serve as a proper hostess. You'll also need appropriate clothing, which will be arranged." Emma nodded, not trusting her voice. "I work long hours at the hospital and my private practice. I don't expect to be bothered with trivial household matters. Mrs. Henderson will train you in what I expect." After dinner, Dr. Wellington retreated to his study, leaving Emma alone in the vast house. She wandered the halls, feeling lost and small among the expensive artwork and furniture. This was her life now, a beautiful prison where she was more like an employee than a wife. As she prepared for bed in her luxurious but lonely room, Emma wondered if Dr. Wellington would ever see her as more than just another acquisition. She had been sold to him like a piece of property, but somewhere deep inside, a small part of her hoped that maybe somehow things could change. She fell asleep clutching the only photo she had of her father, whispering a prayer that tomorrow might bring something better than the cold indifference she had experienced today. Emma woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar curtains. For a moment she forgot where she was, then reality crashed back. She was Mrs. Marcus Wellington now. Though the title felt foreign and uncomfortable, a soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Mrs. Henderson entered with a breakfast tray and a warm smile. "Good morning, dear. I thought you might prefer to eat in your room today while you adjust." Emma sat up, grateful for the kindness. "Thank you. Is Dr. Wellington?" "He left for the hospital at 5:30. He works very early hours." Mrs. Henderson set the tray on a small table by the window. "He asked me to show you around the house today and explain your duties." As Emma ate, Mrs. Henderson explained the household routine. Dr. Wellington liked his coffee black and strong, ready by 5 each morning. His clothes were to be laid out the night before. The house had to be spotless at all times, especially when he entertained colleagues. "He has very high standards," Mrs. Henderson said gently, "but he's fair if you do your job well." The tour of the house took over an hour. There were 12 rooms, each more elegant than the last. The library contained thousands of books, the music room had a grand piano, and Dr. Wellington's study was filled with medical journals and expensive artifacts. "This is his private space," Mrs. Henderson warned as they passed the study. "Never enter without permission." In the afternoon, a woman arrived with dozens of dresses, shoes, and accessories. Dr. Wellington had apparently called a personal shopper to create an entire wardrobe for Emma. "He wants you to look the part," the shopper explained, holding up an elegant black evening gown. "You'll be hosting dinner parties and attending charity events. Image is everything in his world." Emma tried on outfit after outfit, feeling like a doll being dressed for display. The clothes were beautiful but felt like costumes for a role she never auditioned for. That evening, Dr. Wellington returned home at exactly 7. Emma had changed into a navy blue dress and was waiting in the sitting room as Mrs. Henderson had instructed. "How was your day?" she asked tentatively as he poured himself a drink. He looked surprised by the question. "Fine. Did you complete the wardrobe selection?" "Yes, everything fits perfectly." "Good. Tomorrow evening we're hosting the hospital board of directors and their wives. You'll need to act as hostess." He studied her critically. "Mrs. Henderson will coach you on the proper procedures." The next day was a whirlwind of preparation. Mrs. Henderson taught Emma how to greet guests, make small talk, and oversee the serving staff. Emma practiced walking in high heels and memorized information about each board member. "Remember, you represent Dr. Wellington now," Mrs. Henderson said. "These people are important to his career." Emma felt the familiar weight of expectation. First Linda had demanded perfection, now Dr. Wellington did. She wondered if she would ever be good enough for anyone. The dinner party that evening was both elegant and intimidating. Emma wore a burgundy silk dress and diamond earrings that probably cost more than she had ever seen. As guests arrived, she smiled and made conversation, playing the perfect hostess. "Marcus, you didn't tell us you were married," said Dr. Harrison, the chief of surgery, as Emma took his coat. "It was a quiet ceremony," Dr. Wellington replied smoothly. "Emma, this is Dr. Harrison and his wife Margaret." Emma shook hands gracefully, grateful for Mrs. Henderson's training. Throughout the evening, she moved through the house, ensuring everyone's needs were met, listening to conversations about hospital politics and medical conferences. "Your wife is lovely," she overheard Mrs. Harrison tell Dr. Wellington. "So young and fresh. How did you meet?" Through mutual connections, Dr. Wellington answered vaguely. Emma felt a stab of hurt at the dismissive response, but she kept smiling and playing her role. Later, as the last guests left, Dr. Wellington surprised her. "You did well tonight," he said, loosening his tie. The board was impressed. It was the first compliment he had given her, and Emma felt a small spark of hope. "Thank you. I enjoyed meeting everyone. Did you?" He looked at her curiously. "Most of them are quite boring." Emma laughed before she could stop herself. Mrs. Patterson did talk about her cats for 20 minutes. To her amazement, Dr. Wellington almost smiled. "She has 7 of them. Each dinner party, the number seems to increase." For a moment, the coldness in his eyes seemed to soften. Emma saw a glimpse of the man behind the stern facade. "I should go to bed," she said quickly, suddenly nervous. "Emma." His voice stopped her at the door. "You handled yourself well tonight." "Thank you." As Emma prepared for bed, she replayed those few moments of almost connection. Maybe Dr. Wellington wasn't completely heartless. Maybe there was hope for their strange marriage after all. Over the following weeks, a routine developed. Dr. Wellington worked long hours while Emma managed the household and prepared for the social events that seemed to fill their calendar. She began to understand his world better. The pressure, the politics, the constant need to maintain appearances. Sometimes, late at night when he returned from the hospital, she would find him in the library reading medical journals. He looked tired and older than his 35 years. Once she brought him coffee without being asked, and he thanked her with something that might have been genuine gratitude. "Long surgery?" she asked. "A child with a brain tumor. 8 hours." He rubbed his eyes wearily. "These cases are always difficult." Emma saw a different side of him then, not the cold businessman who had bought her, but a doctor who genuinely cared about his patients. "Did the surgery go well?" "We'll know more tomorrow. The family is devastated with worry." Emma wanted to offer comfort, but she didn't know how. Instead, she quietly left him to his thoughts, wondering if maybe there was more to Dr. Marcus Wellington than anyone knew. 3 months into their marriage, Emma began to notice changes in Dr. Wellington's behavior. He came home later each night, often looking exhausted and troubled. The confident, controlled man she had married seemed to be carrying a heavy burden. One evening, Emma found him standing in his study, staring at a framed photograph on his desk. She had never seen the picture before. It showed a beautiful woman with kind eyes and a warm smile. "I'm sorry," Emma said, backing toward the door. "I didn't mean to intrude." "Wait." His voice was softer than usual. "Come here." Emma approached hesitantly. Up close, she could see the woman in the photograph was wearing a wedding dress, and Dr. Wellington stood beside her, looking genuinely happy. "This is Catherine," he said quietly. "My first wife." Emma felt her heart sink. She had wondered why such a successful, handsome man needed to buy a wife. Now she understood. He was still in love with someone else. "She was a pediatric nurse," Dr. Wellington continued, his voice distant. "We met at the hospital 5 years ago. She was everything I'm not. Warm, caring, able to connect with people effortlessly." "What happened to her?" Emma asked gently. "Cancer. She fought for 2 years, but—" He set the photograph down carefully. "She died 18 months ago." Emma felt tears in her eyes. "I'm so sorry." Dr. Wellington looked at her with surprise, as if he had forgotten she was there. "She made me promise something before she died. She made me promise I would try to find happiness again, that I wouldn't shut myself off from the world." "That sounds like something a loving person would say." "I failed her," he said bitterly. "After the funeral, I threw myself into work. I stopped seeing friends, stopped living. The board of directors began pressuring me to remarry, saying my image needed stability. That's when He gestured helplessly. "When you decided to marry someone who wouldn't expect love," Emma finished quietly. He looked at her sharply. "You understand. I understand loneliness," Emma said. "I understand feeling like you're just going through the motions of living." For a moment, they stood in silence. Two people bound together by circumstances but separated by grief and fear. The next few weeks brought unexpected changes. Dr. Wellington began talking to Emma more, sharing small details about his day. He told her about difficult surgeries, amusing colleagues, and challenging cases. Emma found herself looking forward to these conversations. One rainy Thursday evening, Emma was reading in the library when Dr. Wellington came home early. He looked upset, his usual composure cracked. Bad day? Emma asked, setting down her book. I lost a patient today, he said, slumping into a chair. A little girl only 7 years old. I did everything right, but sometimes that's not enough. Emma had never seen him so vulnerable. Without thinking, she moved to the chair beside him. Tell me about her. Sarah, she loved unicorns and wanted to be a veterinarian when she grew up. His voice broke slightly. Her parents trusted me to save her. You gave her the best chance possible, Emma said softly. Sometimes loving someone means accepting that you can't control everything. Dr. Wellington looked at her with surprise. Catherine used to say something similar. She sounds like a wise woman. She was. He was quiet for a moment. I never asked you about your life before, about what you wanted. Emma wasn't sure how to answer. I wanted to go to college, maybe study literature or teaching. But after my father died, those dreams seemed impossible. What stopped you? Emma hesitated, then decided on honesty. Money. My stepmother had debts and I had to work to help pay them. By the time I was old enough to leave, she had convinced me I wasn't smart enough for college anyway. Dr. Wellington frowned. That's not true. I've watched you manage this household, handle social events, deal with difficult people. You're clearly intelligent. Emma felt a warmth spread through her chest. No one had called her intelligent in years. What if you still went to college? He asked suddenly. What do you mean? There's a university nearby with an excellent literature program. You could start with evening classes. Emma stared at him in shock. You would allow that? Allow? He looked puzzled. Emma, you're not a prisoner here. I know this marriage began as a business arrangement, but that doesn't mean you can't have your own life, your own dreams. The next morning, Emma found college brochures on her breakfast tray. Dr. Wellington had already left for work, but there was a note in his careful handwriting. The fall semester starts in 6 weeks. Think about it. Emma spent the day reading through course descriptions and admission requirements. For the first time in years, she felt excited about the future. That evening, she thanked Dr. Wellington over dinner. You don't need to thank me, he said. I should have thought of it sooner. You're still young. You shouldn't waste your life playing housewife to someone who barely acknowledges your existence. You acknowledge me more than you think, Emma said quietly. He looked at her searchingly. Do I? The conversation was interrupted by Mrs. Henderson announcing that Dr. Wellington had an emergency call from the hospital. As he left, he squeezed Emma's shoulder gently, the first time he had touched her since their wedding day. Later that night, Emma filled out college application forms, her heart racing with possibility. When Dr. Wellington came home near midnight, he found her still working at the kitchen table. Still up? He asked, loosening his tie. I'm applying for the literature program, Emma said, looking up with shining eyes. I want to try. Good, he said, and this time his smile was genuine and warm. Catherine would have liked you, I think. She always believed everyone deserved a chance to chase their dreams. As Emma went to bed that night, she realized something had shifted between them. They were still strangers in many ways, but they were beginning to become friends. And perhaps, Emma thought hopefully, friendship might be the beginning of something deeper. Emma started her college classes in September, and the change in her life was remarkable. For the first time in years, she had something that belonged entirely to her. Dr. Wellington arranged for a driver to take her to evening classes, and he never questioned the time she spent studying. Her literature professor, Dr. Sarah Chen, was encouraging and brilliant. Emma discovered she had a natural talent for analyzing poetry and prose, and her essays earned high marks. She made friends with other students, joining study groups and participating in class discussions with growing confidence. You're different, Dr. Wellington observed one evening as Emma excitedly told him about a paper she was writing on Emily Dickinson. Happier. I feel like myself again, Emma admitted. I had forgotten what it was like to have something to look forward to. Dr. Wellington watched her with an expression she couldn't quite read. I'm glad. Their relationship continued to evolve. Dr. Wellington began asking about her classes, listening with genuine interest as she explained literary theories and discussed her favorite authors. In return, he shared more about his work, his frustrations with hospital politics, and his passion for neurosurgery. One evening in October, Emma was studying for a midterm exam when Dr. Wellington came home with flowers, simple white roses, not the elaborate arrangements that usually decorated the house. What are these for? Emma asked, surprised. I heard you got an A on your Milton paper, he said, looking almost embarrassed. I thought you should celebrate. Emma felt tears spring to her eyes. No one had ever bought her flowers for an academic achievement. Thank you, she whispered. They're beautiful. Emma, he said hesitantly, would you like to have dinner out tomorrow? There's a new restaurant downtown that's supposed to be excellent. Emma's heart skipped. Like a date? I suppose it would be, he said carefully. If you're comfortable with that. Emma nodded, unable to speak past the sudden tightness in her throat. The restaurant was intimate and elegant, with soft lighting and quiet music. Dr. Wellington had reserved a corner table, and for the first time since their wedding, Emma felt like she was on a real date. I've been thinking, Dr. Wellington said over dessert, about our arrangement, about what I asked of you. Emma's stomach clenched. What do you mean? I brought you into this house like a piece of furniture, expecting you to fulfill a role without considering what you might want or need. He looked directly at her. That was wrong. You've been kind to me, Emma said quietly. Have I? I bought you from someone who was supposed to protect you. I treated you like an employee instead of a person. He leaned forward. I want to change that if you'll let me. What are you saying? I'm saying I'd like to start over. To get to know you properly, to court you the way you deserved from the beginning. Emma felt her heart racing. And if I say no, then nothing changes in terms of your security or your schooling, he said firmly. You'll always have a home with me, whatever you decide. But I hope you'll give us a chance. Emma studied his face, seeing sincerity and vulnerability she had never noticed before. I'd like that. He reached across the table and took her hand, his touch gentle and warm. Then we'll take it slowly. No pressure, no expectations, just two people getting to know each other. The courtship that followed was unlike anything Emma had ever experienced. Dr. Wellington, Marcus, as he now insisted she call him, brought her small gifts, books by authors she mentioned loving, her favorite coffee from a shop near the university, tickets to plays and concerts. They began taking walks in the garden after dinner, talking about everything and nothing. Marcus told her about his childhood, his decision to become a doctor, his fears and dreams. Emma shared her own stories, her love of literature, her hopes for the future. I never thought I could feel this way again, Marcus confessed one evening as they sat by the fountain in the garden. After Catherine died, I convinced myself I was done with love, with connection. What changed? Emma asked. You did, he said simply. Watching you come alive in school, seeing your kindness toward Mrs. Henderson, the way you listen when I talk about difficult cases. You brought warmth back into this house. Emma felt her cheeks flush. I was so afraid when I came here. I thought you would always see me as something you bought. I'm ashamed of that now, Marcus said. I was so buried in my grief that I forgot how to see people as human beings. You reminded me. Their first real kiss happened on a snowy December evening. Emma had been studying by the fireplace when Marcus came home from the hospital. Snow dusted his dark coat and his cheeks were red from the cold. How did the surgery go? Emma asked, setting aside her textbook. Better than expected. The patient should make a full recovery. Marcus sat beside her on the sofa, closer than usual. What are you reading? Jane Austen. We're discussing social class and marriage in her novels. Marcus smiled. Appropriate, considering our circumstances. Are we a Jane Austen couple? Emma asked teasingly. Pride and Prejudice, perhaps? Though I hope I'm not quite as arrogant as Mr. Darcy. Only sometimes, Emma said with a smile. Marcus laughed, and suddenly they were looking at each other with new awareness. When he leaned forward and kissed her, it felt natural and right. Like coming home. I love you, he whispered against her lips. I love you too, Emma replied, surprised by how true it felt. Christmas that year was magical. Marcus decorated the house with Emma's help, and they hosted a small dinner party for close friends. Emma met Marcus's colleagues as his beloved wife rather than an obligation, and the difference was remarkable. You've transformed him, Dr. Harrison told Emma privately. Marcus was lost for so long after Catherine died. We were worried he might never find his way back to the living. He saved me too, Emma replied, watching Marcus laugh at something Mrs. Henderson said. We saved each other. On Christmas morning, Marcus gave Emma a first edition of her favorite novel, with an inscription that made her cry. To Emma, who brought literature and love back into my life. Forever yours, Marcus. Emma's gift to him was a framed photo of them together, taken at the university's winter formal. In the picture, they looked genuinely happy, like a couple deeply in love. Thank you, Marcus said softly, studying the photograph, for giving me a second chance at happiness. As they sat by the Christmas tree, Emma reflected on the journey that had brought them together. What had begun as a cold transaction had blossomed into real love, built on friendship, respect, and understanding. Do you ever regret it? Marcus asked, as if reading her thoughts. Marrying you? Emma considered the question seriously. I regret how it happened, the circumstances that brought us together. But I don't regret where we ended up. Neither do I, Marcus said, pulling her close. I think Catherine would approve. Emma smiled, feeling grateful for the woman who had loved Marcus first and whose dying wish had ultimately led him back to love again. Spring brought new challenges and revelations. Emma was excelling in her second semester of college, and Marcus had been promoted to chief of neurosurgery. Their marriage had transformed into a genuine partnership built on love and mutual respect. One afternoon in April, Emma was studying in the garden when Mrs. Henderson approached with a worried expression. There's a woman at the door asking for you, dear. She says she's your stepmother. Emma's blood turned cold. Linda stood in the foyer, looking around the elegant house with calculating eyes. She was dressed more expensively than Emma remembered, but there was something desperate about her appearance. Emma, darling, Linda said with false sweetness. You look wonderful. Marriage obviously agrees with you. What do you want, Linda? Emma asked, her voice steady despite her racing heart. Is that any way to greet your mother? I've missed you terribly. You're not my mother, and you sold me like property. What do you want? Linda's mask slipped slightly. I've had some bad luck lately. The casino investments didn't work out, and I owe some very unpleasant people a significant amount of money. That's not my problem anymore. But it could be, Linda said with a sly smile. You see, I never officially signed over guardianship of you to your husband. Technically, our original agreement was void because you were still under my legal care. Emma felt the world tilt. What are you saying? I'm saying your marriage might not be legal, dear. Unless, of course, we can come to a new arrangement. Emma's mind raced. She had been 19 when Linda married her off, not 22 as Linda had claimed. In their state, that meant she had needed guardian consent for marriage. How much do you want? Emma asked quietly. $500,000, a small price for ensuring your happiness continues. I don't have that kind of money, but your husband does. I'm sure Dr. Wellington wouldn't want any scandal attached to his name. That evening, Emma told Marcus everything. She had expected anger, but instead he held her close and listened carefully. We'll handle this together, he said firmly. She can't blackmail us. But what if she's right about the marriage not being legal? Then we'll get married again, properly this time. Marcus cupped her face in his hands. Emma, nothing Linda says can change how I feel about you. You're my wife in every way that matters. The next morning, Marcus called his lawyer. They discovered that Linda was partially correct. The marriage was technically invalid due to Emma's age and the falsified documents. However, Linda's actions constituted fraud and extortion. We can have her arrested, the lawyer explained, but it might be easier to simply remarry and let the authorities handle her debts. What about the money she already took from you? Emma asked Marcus. It's gone, Marcus said with a shrug. Consider it the cost of finding you. They decided to remarry in a small ceremony with just Mrs. Henderson and a few close friends as witnesses. This time Emma wore a dress she chose herself, and Marcus's vows were heartfelt and genuine. The first time, I married you out of loneliness and convenience, he said, holding her hands as they stood in the garden where they had fallen in love. Today I marry you because you are my heart, my partner, my best friend. The first time I had no choice, Emma replied, tears streaming down her face. Today I choose you freely with all my love. After the ceremony, they called the police about Linda. She was arrested that evening for fraud and extortion, and Emma felt a weight lift from her shoulders that she hadn't realized she was carrying. Meanwhile, Emma received an unexpected phone call from her college advisor. Emma, I wanted to discuss an opportunity with you, Dr. Chen said. Have you considered graduate school? Graduate school? You have exceptional analytical skills, and your writing is some of the best I've seen from an undergraduate. There's a funded master's program in comparative literature that would be perfect for you. Emma was speechless. Graduate school had never seemed possible, even in her wildest dreams. That evening, she shared the news with Marcus over dinner. "You should absolutely do it," he said immediately. "You have a gift, Emma. You should develop it fully. But it would mean 2 more years of school, longer hours away from home. So, I fell in love with your mind as much as your heart. I want to see you reach your full potential." Emma felt overwhelmed by his support. "Are you sure?" "Completely sure. Besides," Marcus added with a grin, "I like having the smartest wife in the room at dinner parties." Emma applied for the graduate program and was accepted with a full scholarship. As she prepared to start her advanced studies, she reflected on how dramatically her life had changed. One evening in late summer, Emma found Marcus in his study, looking at the photograph of Catherine. Instead of feeling jealous, Emma felt grateful to the woman who had shaped the man she loved. "Do you think she would approve of me?" Emma asked, joining him. "I know she would," Marcus said, putting his arm around her. "She always said I needed someone who would challenge me, make me grow. You've done that." "I've been thinking about something," Emma said carefully. "The children's ward at the hospital is starting a reading program. They need volunteers to read to young patients. I thought maybe you want to volunteer there? If you think it would be appropriate." "I know you like to keep your professional and personal lives separate." Marcus turned to look at her with surprise. "Emma, you don't need my permission to volunteer anywhere. But I think it's a wonderful idea. The children would love you." Emma started volunteering at the hospital that fall, reading stories to young patients and helping them with homework when they felt well enough. Marcus often stopped by during his rounds, and Emma could see how much he enjoyed seeing her interact with the children. "You're a natural with them," he observed. One day as they drove home together, "I love seeing their faces light up when we get to an exciting part of the story," Emma said. "It reminds me why literature matters. It can transport you anywhere, even from a hospital bed." "Have you ever thought about having children of our own?" Marcus asked quietly. Emma's heart skipped. They had never discussed children directly, though she had certainly thought about it. "Have you?" she asked. "Every day since I fell in love with you," he admitted. "I used to think Catherine and I would have children together. After she died, I thought that dream was over. But watching you with those kids, I'd love to have children with you," Emma said softly. "When we're both ready." Marcus reached over and took her hand. "I love you, Emma Wellington." "I love you too, Marcus Wellington." As they pulled into their driveway, Emma looked at the house that had once felt like a prison and now felt like home. She thought about the frightened girl who had been sold into marriage and marveled at how that same girl had found her voice, her strength, and her true love in the most unexpected place. The future stretched ahead of them, full of possibilities Emma had never dared to dream. 2 years later, Emma stood in the university auditorium wearing her master's graduation gown, scanning the crowd for Marcus. She spotted him in the 3rd row, his face beaming with pride. Next to him sat Mrs. Henderson, who had become like a grandmother to them both. Emma's thesis on redemption and transformation in Victorian literature had earned the highest honors, and she had been offered a position as a teaching assistant while pursuing her doctorate. The shy, frightened girl who had been sold into marriage was now an accomplished scholar with her own dreams and ambitions. After the ceremony, Marcus swept her into his arms, spinning her around as friends and family applauded. "I'm so proud of you," he whispered in her ear. "Dr. Emma Wellington has a nice ring to it." "Not yet," Emma laughed. "I still have 3 years of doctoral work ahead of me, and I'll be cheering you on every step of the way." The celebration continued at home, where Marcus had organized a surprise party. Emma's classmates mingled with Marcus's colleagues, and the house was filled with laughter and joy. As Emma looked around at the gathering, she realized these people weren't just acquaintances anymore. They were friends who genuinely cared about her success. Dr. Chen approached with a glass of champagne. "Emma, I have some exciting news. The university press wants to publish a revised version of your thesis as a book." Emma nearly dropped her glass. "A book? My book? Your research on redemption narratives is groundbreaking. They think it could become a standard text in Victorian literature courses." Marcus appeared at Emma's side, having overheard the conversation. "My wife, the published author," he said, his voice filled with wonder and pride. Later that evening, after the guests had gone home, Emma and Marcus sat in their garden watching the sunset. Emma's graduation cap lay forgotten on the grass beside them. "Do you remember our first evening in this garden?" Marcus asked, taking her hand. "When you told me you wanted to start over, to court me properly." "I was terrified," Marcus admitted. "I had no idea how to open my heart again. You made it look so easy." "It wasn't easy," Emma said softly. "I was just as scared as you were. But I think maybe love is supposed to be a little frightening." Marcus pulled out a small velvet box, and Emma's breath caught. "Marcus, we're already married." "I know," he said, opening the box to reveal a stunning sapphire ring surrounded by diamonds. "But our first wedding was about obligation and desperation. I want to give you something that represents our real beginning." Emma's eyes filled with tears as Marcus slipped the ring onto her finger beside her simple wedding band. "This is a promise ring," he explained. "A promise that I will spend every day trying to be worthy of your love, supporting your dreams, and building a life together based on choice, not circumstance." "I love you so much," Emma whispered, kissing him softly. A month later, Emma received a phone call that would change everything. Linda had been released from prison and was demanding to see her. "Absolutely not," Marcus said when Emma told him. "She lost the right to contact you when she sold you." "I know, but I think I need to see her, to close that chapter of my life properly." They met at a coffee shop near the university with Marcus waiting in the car outside. Linda looked older, and harder than Emma remembered, her face marked by 2 years of prison life. "You look good," Linda said bitterly. "Rich husband, fancy education, I guess you should thank me." "Thank you." Emma stared at her in disbelief. "If I hadn't made that arrangement, you'd still be cleaning my house and waiting tables. Now look at you, a real lady. What you did was sell me like property because you couldn't control your gambling addiction." Linda's expression turned ugly. "Don't act so high and mighty. You got lucky, that's all. Most girls in your situation don't end up living in mansions. Most girls in my situation have mothers who protect them instead of exploiting them." "I protected you," Linda snapped. "I kept a roof over your head after your father died. I made sure you married well." Emma realized then that Linda would never understand the harm she had caused. In her twisted mind, she had done Emma a favor. "I forgive you," Emma said quietly, standing to leave. "Forgive me?" Linda looked stunned. "I forgive you for selling me, for lying about my age, for making me believe I was worthless. I forgive you because holding on to anger would only hurt me, not you. I don't need your forgiveness." "I'm not giving it for you," Emma said. "I'm giving it for me." Emma walked away from Linda for the last time, feeling lighter with each step. The frightened girl who had been trapped by her stepmother's greed was finally, truly free. That fall, Emma began her doctoral studies while also teaching undergraduate literature classes. She discovered she loved teaching, watching her students' faces light up when they understood a particularly complex passage or theme. Marcus often joked that he had to compete with Jane Austen and Charlotte Bronte for his wife's attention, but Emma could see how much he enjoyed her passion for her work. Their life together had found a comfortable rhythm. They spent mornings reading newspapers over coffee, evenings discussing their respective days, and weekends exploring museums, attending concerts, or simply enjoying each other's company at home. One snowy December evening, exactly 3 years after their real first kiss, Emma had news to share. "Marcus," she said over dinner, her voice trembling with excitement and nerves. "I'm pregnant." Marcus dropped his fork, staring at her in shock. "Pregnant, are you sure?" "I saw the doctor today, we're going to have a baby." Marcus leaped up from his chair and swept Emma into his arms, spinning her around the dining room. "A baby," he kept repeating. "We're having a baby." 9 months later, Emma held their daughter Sarah Catherine Wellington in her arms. She was perfect, with Marcus's dark hair and Emma's green eyes. "She's beautiful," Marcus whispered, tears streaming down his face as he cradled his daughter for the first time. "Hello, little one," Emma said softly. We've been waiting so long to meet you." As Emma watched Marcus sing a lullaby to their daughter, she thought about the incredible journey that had brought them to this moment. What had begun as a transaction based on desperation and loneliness had blossomed into a love story more beautiful than anything she had ever read in her beloved books. Their daughter would grow up knowing she was wanted, cherished, and loved unconditionally. She would never know what it felt like to be treated as property or to doubt her own worth. "Thank you," Emma whispered to Marcus as they tucked Sarah into her crib. "For what? For seeing me as more than what I was sold as. For loving me enough to let me become who I was meant to be. Thank you for saving me from a life without love," Marcus replied, pulling Emma close. "You gave me back my heart." As they stood together watching their sleeping daughter, Emma realized that sometimes the most unexpected beginnings could lead to the most beautiful endings. She had been sold to Marcus as a wife, but she had found something far more precious. She had found herself, her voice, her strength, and a love that would last forever. The scared young woman who had once stood in a wedding dress she hadn't chosen was gone, replaced by a confident mother, scholar, and partner who knew her own worth. And it had all started with a man who learned that true love couldn't be bought. It could only be freely given and gratefully received.